watching Views and News, and I'm Faisal Rehman, live from our Islamabad studios. Today, we'll be talking about the economic situation of Pakistan. As we all know that the recent number that we got to know about the economic growth rate has been set at 3.94, or perhaps you can call it 3.9%. Now, well, this reflects the success of our government's economic policies while managing COVID-19 pandemic. Remember one thing, that this particular problem of pandemic has practically made sure that the economies that were flourishing, the economies that were really going and doing well, seemed to be in negative dive. And then later countries like Pakistan, countries like India, and perhaps the developing countries also faced the blunt. Now, having said that, the major sectors that need to be discussed perhaps are agriculture, industry and services. This is the basic overall compilation when you talk about the growth. This year, the Prime Minister in fact said that the National Accounts Committee has finalized the GDP growth estimate, and GDP growth again is estimated at 3.9%, as you can see that on the screen. And he has also said that this is the reflection of our government's economic policies, and especially when you talk about the real issue of COVID-19. Furthermore, the Prime Minister also added that I have always believed overseas Pakistanis to be our greatest asset. In April, remittances rose to an all-time high of 2.8 billion. Now, this figure is for 1 month, and the month of April, and remitting 24.2 billion in the first 10 months of the fiscal year 2021. He says that you have broken the record level achieved in entire fiscal year 2020. Thank you for your faith in Naya Pakistan. And Shaukat Tari, the finance minister, says that a strong growth despite being in a tough IMF program, which was necessitated by unsustainable current account deficit and falling foreign currency reserves and vicious COVID-19. And he further added that preparations for the budget are underway, and we are planning on bringing out of the box things this year. The government's focus will now be on reducing inflation, and that is primarily the major problem, that the prices are going up of the essential commodities, and in particular when you're talking about the eatables. And when we talk about the inflation basket, around 40 to 45% of that basket primarily is based on the kitchen items. So that price of those particular products should go down, and primarily it is not about the supply, it is about hoarding issue that has become a problem and a half. Whether you talk about wheat, you talk about sugar, but this year again the sugar crop has shown a lot of progress, and around 20% more sugar cane has been produced. So that's a very positive sign. I think this is the most important area where the government is focusing. But obviously, when we talk about the overall economic situation, the kind of dividends the people look forward to, they aren't there yet. They will take time. Perhaps about a year and a half, maybe more, it has been wasted because of the COVID. Look at the situation in schools and colleges, and otherwise the government is still following the SOPs, and they're making sure that people do the same. And perhaps because of that, today there was this announcement in Karachi and in particular in Sindh that 50% of the cases are there. So they are adopting certain strict measures, and there is no other way out. Simple as that. But to talk about the overall economic situation of Pakistan, let me quickly introduce you to our panelists. We have with us in our studio on my right is Ahmed Hassan Mughal Saab. He is the former president of Islamabad Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thank you so much, Mughal Saab, for your time, sir. And on Skype, we have with us Niaz Murtaza Saab. He's a political economist. Niaz Saab, thank you so much for your time, sir. Pleasure to have you. And we also have with us Zishan Merchant Saab. He's a senior economist. Merchant Saab, thank you so much for your time, sir.
My pleasure.
Now, so talking about the 3.94 figure for the economic growth, and the budget is around the corner, perhaps the first week of the next month, that is June. These targets which the government has set, especially when we talk about the economic growth target, do you believe it is achievable? Or perhaps again the government has set a standard, or set a mark, or set a benchmark rather, that seems to be pretty much attainable, but a lot more needs to be added for this particular figure. So your take, sir.
Definitely, there's always been like projections done by the government institutes, and they're forecasting that this is the growth that we're expecting for the whole year. But you've seen in the past as well that mostly the statistics provided by those institutes are completely different to the real situation. So hopefully, the government needs to do a lot of, has to take a lot of actions as well. You've seen, you're talking about Karachi as well. It's one of the biggest hub of business in Pakistan, and they've got this lockdown situation at the moment as well. So I think the businesses are closing at 6 p.m. over there, and they've got those, as the whole of Pakistan, they've got those Saturdays and Sundays off as well. And you've seen, like, in during Eid holidays, it had been an extended holiday. So probably don't remember such a long holiday since I was
almost 10, 11 days, yes?
Yes, so I don't remember since I was in school probably that, we had such vacations right now. And that was a time, when there's the most economic activity. The next is usually Eid al-Azha, but over there you've seen that, people are usually spending money on Qurbani over there. So usually not a lot of shopping is done, not a lot of economic activity unless related to these animals for sacrifice. So, they've set targets. It's difficult, at the moment right now.
Are these attainable targets?
I think it's...
Or again overrated?
It's still, there's just a figure, you go to talk to anyone who's doing business at the moment, they're really very suppressed at the moment, because there's not a lot of economic activity with the timings as well, with the 2 days off as well, especially retailers.
Friday and Sunday.
Friday and Sunday. I think in Punjab it's probably going to be Friday and Saturday. For the rest, in Federal it's Saturday and Sunday over here. So it's really difficult for especially retailers over here. And I talk to a lot of them daily, and what they want is that maybe it's okay that if they want to close the business at 8 o'clock. But what they want to do is that the government should allow at least one more day, Saturday, as it used to be before. So they're hoping with this a lot of vaccination being done every day, and when hopefully things will get back to normal, and the business activity will be affected by it.
But Mughal Sahib, the number that the government has produced, they say over 200,000 plus people are being vaccinated every day. Starting from the eldest, now they're also vaccinating those who are above the age of 30. That is going to take a lot of time.
Of course,
a lot of time.
We've got a huge population. So
exactly. Yes. So that is what I'm saying, that when you talk about the people getting vaccinated at the same time, keeping the businesses closed for at least important days, and those are the days when people actually shop, because these are the off days.
Especially, when people are talking about, comparing ourselves to Europe, like especially in countries like Germany, when Sundays are completely off over there. So not even any activity, business activity, apart from restaurants and cinemas are open. So, but they have a structure over there. People, their habits are like this. They get up early. They finish their jobs. They go do the shopping over there before.
There is a system in place.
There's a proper system over there. Yeah. But we can't actually overnight adapt to the same system over here. Before it used to be 6 o'clock, it's 8 o'clock. It's a bit of a relief at the moment. It's still 2 more hours extended. But you've seen over here, you go to the big cities over there, businesses open at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and they're open up till 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning. So those businesses are really affected by that, and the hours have been shrunk, and then you have to talk about the budget coming up, and there's going to be high targets, or expectedly there's going to be higher target than before as well, to what they're supposed to achieve. But with the current situation over here, the economic activity in the country, I think it's going to be really difficult for the government.
But perhaps it seems that the next year is going to be a lot better than the previous one, despite the fact that whatever we went through, I mean the whole world went through, I guess things are getting very much streamlined, and let's hope that the targets which we have set are attainable, achievable, and also the numbers show the progress at the end of the day, because the digits, that's what matter overall, Coming to you, Niaz Murtaza Saab, first of all, your take, sir, on the current statement issued by the government. The 3.94 is the GDP target that we have set. Is it overambitious, ambitious, or you think it's attainable? Your take on the same point.
It's not really a target, it's a provisional estimate of the GDP that the government is saying that we will be achieving for the year July 2020 to June 2021. So the exercise works in a way, in order to issue the Pakistan Economic Survey, the government makes a provisional estimate of the GDP a couple of months even before the end of the year, so that it can be published, and then it's later on revised when the real figures come in. So what you have is an estimate, and if we look at the history of last 2 3 years, and even longer than that, the original provisional estimates that are given are usually brought downwards when the real figures come in. So last year, the expected provisional figure was around minus 0.3%, and then it became almost minus 0.5%. The year before that, it was 3.3%, and it went down to 1.7%.
Yeah.
So this calculation, it looks overly rosy to me, and not just to me, but to a lot of other economists who spend a lot of time looking at the overall number, like Dr. Pasha, SDPI. They look at if you're talking about the growth in the industrial sector, they look at electricity consumption. If you're talking about agriculture, they look at things like transport, crop production, and so on. And their estimate is that this figure looks overly rosy. It may be less economical calculation and more political calculation. So I would hold my breath a little bit and wait for the real figures to come in, and then decide what kind of growth we've really had. And even if you look at these figures, what you see is that for a developing country like Pakistan, the big growth should come in the industrial sector. And if you look at these figures, the lowest growth is in the industrial sector, around 2.75, and the highest growth is in the service sector, which is 4.47. And which is again troubling, because there is all this talk that Pakistan is becoming prematurely an industrial economy, the way the advanced economies are, the USA. And that's wrong for a country like Pakistan, because your biggest employment, your biggest expansion should come from the industry. So even if we look at these figures, it's disappointing to see that the industrial sector is still low. And then all the other issues that my friend added about lockdowns in Karachi, and all the time lost in Eid. So I don't know what kind of a growth rate we might end up with, but it's probably going to be more, somewhere between 2% to 3%, in my opinion.
2 to 3%. And your take, Merchant Saab?
Bismillah. I see that, you see, the challenges that Pakistan had immediately faced when we had all these lockdown situations and everything was closed. But fortunately, Pakistan was lucky that the COVID did not hit us as bad as has affected the other countries of the world. So what had happened that Pakistan's textile sector started performing because orders were getting cancelled from Bangladesh, from India, and these orders were somehow coming to Pakistan, and the exports of the, I would say this, the textile sector started to grow, and at the same time they started to expand also. Your exports have gone up. Your, be it your IT exports, be it your textile, they have gone up from the last year. That has shown impetus. And what has happened is, I feel that it has been a blessing in disguise, business wise, not otherwise, but business wise, Pakistan has been lucky that Pakistan did not suffer the way other countries of the world have suffered. And I totally believe that since last few months, everything has gotten a good momentum, be it a construction sector, be it your automobile sector, be it your pharmaceutical, be it your fertilizer, and the crops, the indications that we have been hearing that Pakistan is going to have good crops this year, be it wheat or otherwise. So overall, I think the growth Pakistan is looking at is somewhere around three. It could be
Okay.
close to three or it would pass 3%. But it is going to be better than last year, of course. And the tax targets that we had set last year, you see, there are two parameters to look at it. I mean, one way is to look at from the numbers that we have been given by the governments or by the state bank or other institutions. And then next, the other way to look at it, are we achieving the tax targets? Are we collecting the revenue? So far, Pakistan has been lucky this year that we have month on month basis, we have achieved the tax targets, meaning thereby there was certain economic activity that has generated tax. Had there been no economic activity or lesser economic activity, we would not have collected or have achieved the month on month tax targets. So, in overall perspective, if I were to say this year has been a much better year than the last 2 years of this government, revenue wise, and I'm sure that if you look at the momentum that has gathered over the last few months,
Mhm.
I'm sure Pakistan is on the right track at the moment, and we are going to achieve the targets more or less. Yes, we're going to be there. It's going to be a touch and go situation, but the targets that have been set wise, revenue wise, I'm sure we're going to achieve those targets.
All right. Now, Bakal Saab's most important area, whenever you talk to anybody, anyone, the first and the foremost complaint is regarding the inflation. That things are getting so expensive, there's nobody put a check on them. Look at the prices. I mean, last year it was around this, and instead it should have been this much, but I mean, the retailer is asking anything, I mean, especially for the imported products and so on and so forth in other cases. Even you talk about the agricultural produce for that matter, it is very sad to see that the grower is throwing away its tomatoes away because he is not able to get that kind of money. So, I mean, this is something which shouldn't be on, but this is what the reality is all about. 25% of the total population of Pakistan, sir, that is well over 6 crore. That's a huge number. They live under the poverty line. And this is not me stating this, this is your own Prime Minister Imran Khan Saab saying so. 25% of the population living under the poverty line, and on top your inflation hovers around double digits. Sometimes they claim that's around 8%, 9%, but sir, that's too much. It shouldn't be more than 1.5 to 2%. Your take on that part, sir? Is it because of the hoarding issue? It is because of the planning issue? What
Well,
exactly seems to be the core problem?
first of all, the cost of production has been, with increase in utility prices, cost of production goes up, the cost is passed on to the consumer. You're expecting that, the prices will go up. Another thing is that you mentioned about the tomatoes over there. So there's no proper planning in. There's no proper, probably there's no program properly, and that there's no guidance for our farmers. To what crop to yield, and what should be, what are the latest factors.
And these are all about economic reforms, and your agriculture reforms is a major part of that.
Definitely, definitely. So this you compare it to any other country, developed country, and the efficiency that they, the yield that they get from the same acre of land is probably 2 or 3 times more than what we get in Pakistan. So what would happen is that when there's like due to climate change, there's severe weather, it affects the production. There's a shortage of, so it's a supply and demand issue as well. So there is no proper planning. If there is a shortage of wheat, the government will import at a higher price at the last moment. So these are the kind of things. There has to be a proper mechanism, or there has to be a proper plan for the country, that how are we supposed to improve our production. The rate at which our population is growing, this whatever we are producing is going to be probably in the next few years, it's going to be very scarce for us. We're going to have a problem of water as well in the future as well.
Absolutely, sir.
Definitely.
Your water security, your food security.
So that is all. We cannot be an import. We are an agriculture-based economy. We should be exporting our products outside. But what happens is, because due to poor planning,
so you
we are the ones
export
who
and then you import the same product.
This is poor planning over there. So there is no, everybody's looking. What we're looking for is, how to make a profit over here. So now everybody's looking for some way, a shortcut to, make money over here. So this is what we do. Like you mentioned, exporting something and then importing it at a higher price. And there's a lot of issues involved over there. So unless and until there is a proper plan, there has to be a long-term plan that the whole country is supposed to work upon. Compare a country like China, they have a national plan and the whole country is working towards that.
I'll just share one example, because social media is something, you can't hide anything from it. There was this news clip of Jung Akhbar, and that was there, and that dated 1972. Imagine, 1972, 49 years ago. And the headline was, that we'll take strict action against the sugar hoarders or the sugar mafia as they call it. 49 years ago, sir, and we are still facing the same problem.
It's
what about the reforms? What about the implementation? So it means that there are certain big fish, there are people who control the system, the mechanism and everything, and they can do whatever they want to.
See, the people who are involved in these kind of things are the ones who are influential, or the ones who are supposed to reform the laws. Probably, you know, you go to all those the people who are elected for legislation. You know, they're not supposed to be, you know, working on just one thing. Probably most of the people don't even know what legislation is who are elected in the parliament over here. So how do you expect them, you know, probably they're somehow related to that person who's the one who's doing this kind of things.
They have their own interests.
Definitely.
So if there is a clash of interest, the person shouldn't be there. But unfortunately, those are the ones who are, making all the decisions.
So we're hoping, you know, that I don't see it happening, you know, the inflation going down over there. And like the Prime Minister has mentioned, you know, that there's been a lot of remittances from abroad as well. So with the inflation rate going up, you know, the cost of living over here is going up as well. So people who have relatives abroad, they've been spending more money to Pakistan over here. That's for the reason
if
for
a
the cover the
family
cost.
could live, let's suppose, in 10,000 rupees, I'm just giving you an example. Now they need 13, 14, 15,000 rupees. So obviously that is one of the reason, the kind of uncertainty that is also prevailing out there. Plus now a lot of people are actually, having their transactions through the proper channels. That's another reason. Now let me take the same point to Murtaza Sahab. Inflation, big issue. Whether you're talking about the agricultural produce or the manufactured goods for that matter. The prices, I mean, every time you would hear a new price. God knows if we have a proper consumer protection society or a system, or this is going to continue, that whosoever is charging. I mean, I'm just going to give you an example of a cigarette. That's an imported brand. Somebody is selling it for 300 rupees. Another shop, it's 350. And in a couple of other shops, I've seen it being sold at 320 rupees. So I'm just giving you an example that this is what is happening, sir.
Definitely, you know, there were 1 or 2 months when the inflation figure had gone down, but now since January, it's again picked up. And you
Yeah.
know, you need to, you know, make the connections. On the one hand, we say, you know, remittances are coming in, and that's very good. But then you also have to look at, you know, the linkage between remittances and inflation, because even though remittances are going up, foreign direct investment is actually going down. So what that means is that, you know, when remittances come in, there is money in the hands of the people to spend it, right? Because that is for family expenses. But then, you know, if productivity is not increasing because investment is not increasing, what is happening is that, you know, there are more rupees chasing a fixed or a much slower expanding industrial output base. So this is what is happening because, you know, the economy is not in sync. Remittances are increasing, but investment, especially foreign direct investment, is falling. So you have a very lopsided economy. You know, initially I talked about, you know, the imbalance between the service sector and the industrial sector, and then we also have an imbalance between, you know, the sources, which is you look at, you know, how much of your GDP is consumption versus investment versus government expenditure. That's another way of looking
I think that's
at
very
it. And
important.
if remittances are coming in, that means your consumption is increasing, but your investment is not increasing. So that is another imbalance that is being created in the economy. So the government has to take a look at the macro picture and make sure that it's sustainable growth. Otherwise, it will be the same as with the PMLN government. You know, they produced this 5.8 figures, but they were not sustainable because, you know, they were being pumped by keeping, you know, the rupee overly the exchange rate low at 100 rupees to the dollar. And ultimately, you know, the bubble burst, and the same thing is going to happen if it's going to be remittance based, consumption based, service sector. This is not really sustainable. So the big thing is, you know, increase investment, increase the industrial product so that you have more jobs and more sustainable thing. And then the other thing is, you know, taxes. Uh, First 2 years of this government, they were flat at around 4 trillion, which is the same figure that the PMLN government had left.
Correct.
And this year's target was 5.2 trillion, then it was brought down to 4.9 trillion, and now it's 4.6 and 4.7 trillion. And let's see whether they meet that or not. in a PMLN's government, at least, they almost double tax revenues over 5 years, and here you don't have that. So there's a lot of imbalances that are developing. The current account balance is in control, but then, there's a lot of other balances that are going out of control.
Now, another important area, Merchant Saab, is about the government borrowing. Now, we have heard and we have learned that the State Bank of Pakistan has proposed some amendments to change both the objectives and the functions. And again, when we talk about the government borrowing, sir, that has been on a rise, God knows why, and that needs to be cut down. I think that is one area where, if the government is borrowing that kind of money and your interest rate was hovering around 13-14%, and that was the time we thought that you can't use this word growth oriented budget with this kind of an interest rate. Obviously now the government has brought it down. Do you think that is going to give some sort of a support to the overall budget, sir? Because if there is no money for the investors, and obviously that money is required, I mean, most of it is consumed by the government as an expenditure, sir. Because when you talk about the expenditure, it hasn't come down. It's almost the same. And let's be very clear about one thing, sir. It seems that we are penny wise and pound foolish.
I'll just like to comment on the agriculture first, and then I'll answer this question.
Please go
You
ahead,
see,
sir.
the challenge at agricultural front is that there are no proper storage facilities in Pakistan.
Correct?
You see, need to develop these corporate storage facilities, and then once you develop them, then you need to encourage these farmers to either get the technology with them or to store at these storage facilities. And then the next step there should be that there should be a farm to market access to all these farmers, so that the holders in between, they get out of the picture, and the farmer who works very hard, they get the proper value of their investment and their hard work. And if you want to facilitate these farmers, you have developed a very good SARS program where you know the exact income of income level of the people. Perhaps there is now is the time that you can provide subsidies directly to all these farmers, so that the middlemen in between, they get out of the picture again. And you need to do research and development. And I agree with the guest that he was saying that Pakistan will have scarcity of food, we'll have scarcity of water if we don't plan now, because the water is going to be over our heads very soon. So there is uh, an urgent need right now to help the agricultural sector, and it should be done collectively and not individually. I mean, not. I mean, the province should not say that it's the we are going to do our planning and Punjab or Sindh or otherwise. You see, you need to have a national consensus developed on these issues which are of your prime importance. Coming to your question, that Pakistan has uh, the loans that are increasing many a fold. I just had this paper in front of me wherein there is this last 13-year external debt position of Pakistan. During
Correct?
the government of PPP, the external debt was risen by $15 billion. And then come the government of PMLN. The debt was again increased by 34 billion. And during this 2.5 to 3 years of PTI government, the debt has further gone up by 20 billion. So what have we ever tried to get to the root cause that why this debt is increasing, or where the loans that we are taking are being spent? Most of the loans that we take are being spent on the repayments of the interest that we are giving. More than half of your budget is now on your repayment of
Debt
loan.
servicing,
Most
yeah?
half of your budget is on the repayments of your interest payments. That is not your principal payments, but your interest payment. Yes, the interest rate have gone down a bit. Yeah, from the 14, 13.5%, you have gone down to 7. But do you still have cushion to bring it down a little bit more, because in your region, around Pakistan, the interest rates are still a bit lower. Though the prices, they will keep on increasing if the planning is not proper. Because the challenge is, once the people who are doing all the work, if they're not getting paid, all this increase in cost of production, like energy, like petroleum, they all matter at the end of the day. But yes, the policies we need to make at this point of time is how to reduce your external debt, because this is the one thing that is going to matter in the years to come, because Pakistan total debt
Bachchan
is
Saab, it has
has now
always mattered,
crossed.
but the unfortunate part is that we keep on uh, getting the loans on good terms or on bad terms, God knows. But we always end up hearing that this is for the restructuring of the system, of framing the policies. God knows where that money is spent, sir. Honestly speaking, because if
Actually,
that kind
that's
of
the
money was
question we
spent on
need to ask
reform,
the
sir, we would
leaders
have been
over the
among the
last
top
13,
three,
14,
four
or 15 years.
countries in
The
the world.
loans that have been taken, where they have been spending on the that money. That's the question we need to ask. Because once the answer comes
That's where the
for
corruption
those,
seems to be, sir.
that's correct. That's correct. These
Because there is
loans
no
were never
accountability, there's
utilized
nothing.
for the proper means.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, Mughal Saab, another important area. We always got to know that Pakistan is an agro-based country, but so no value addition, nothing at all. So even the good quality ketchup or the butter or the cheese you end up importing. Correct?
Definitely.
There is no point calling that we are the fifth largest producer of milk and eighth largest in wheat and number that in rice and whatever. There is no point, sir. Secondly, you talk about industrial growth, sir. I think that is the key. That holds the key because that is where the job is, that is where the productivity of the nation is, that is where made in Pakistan comes in. And then one sector, that is your services sector, is growing, but there is no value addition as far as the human resource management is concerned. Or when you talk about your human resource, sir, honestly speaking, a lot of people are required in the Middle East, but your own people do not qualify for those jobs because they are not, maybe they are talented, but they do not qualify because they do not have that kind of a skill. The skill management, nothing has been done on that level as well. So we always end up saying, oh, why the Saudis or the people from UAE are hiring more people from India? Because they are qualified, they are skilled, they are more productive as compared to yours. So have we learned anything from CPAC so far, sir? Or we will take another couple of 100 years to learn?
Definitely, there's been a big issue about this, that you have an abundance of human resource, a lot of population, young population over here. Probably you have people who are talented as well. Some have been given the opportunities. They've really excelled in their fields as well. It's just that the mindset that we have. What we want to do is, when I was growing up, the first thing is you get a degree. You need to get a degree, get a master's in probably in business if you want to do business as well, or if you want to look for a job. At that time, there was a boom in telecom and in the banking sector. So most of my classmates, they went into banking or either
Those two sectors were growing.
it was a completely different time. So a lot of money coming in. General Musharraf was in power at that time. So a lot of companies, international companies coming in, foreign direct investment coming in. A lot of good happening in Pakistan, or people, they
So
remember that.
8.7% growth rate.
Definitely.
in the
So,
early
people
2000s,
remember
yeah.
that, at that time was very good. It happens with us at that time. So this mindset that we have, we have to, what most of the people I've met is, what they want to do is to get into a government job. This is what the mindset that we have. Get a job. Either if you have some resources, you start a business. Maybe, probably don't waste money on going into universities. Start your own business if you have the resources. If not, probably then you'll look for a job, and you'll try to get into a government job because you'll do 9 to 5. You get those at retirement, you get something, a pension. Your health might be free. So there has been a lot of government programs for training our resources, the people over here. But people are somehow not interested in that. They'll go as a laborer over there in the UAE, working in the heat at 50 degrees, or working as a security guard over there. The CPEC was, we're expecting, that with a lot of Chinese companies coming into, they'll be setting up their manufacturing plants over here. But unfortunately, we are not skilled for that. A lot of people have not even bothered, probably they should have been people who should have started learning Chinese over here as well. That could have been a
Sir,
start.
Gawada port is almost complete. It has started receiving the big ships.
Definitely. So when you
I was in fact reading about another very interesting story that the first transit, one transit trade ship has also been there. So imagine we did that, but what about the infrastructure?
Definitely.
Distribute it further.
Definitely, there's we have to look into a lot of things. We have to be willing to grow ourselves. It's not that everybody's what they're expecting is everybody's looking for an easy way out. Even you've seen new people over there. Some of them their minds have changed a bit. They're looking into entrepreneurship over here as well. So government cannot provide jobs to each and every person that graduates in Pakistan. We have to look into these things as well. There's been a lot of
and that is where the private sector, along with the other sector.
Yeah, definitely. There has to be
Public
linkages,
sector, they have to work
linkages
together.
between the universities and the manufacturing sector over here.
Collaboration,
Yeah, definitely, the university I went to abroad, they had a section of automobile engineering, and those people that graduated over there went to work for the same company over there. So there has to be linkages over here.
The concept behind LUMS.
Definitely, definitely. So most of them, there's only a handful of universities in Pakistan.
But that's what I'm saying. But
you're in your last semester and you get offered a job over here. So that is a completely advanced level. Mostly universities over here, they do not have any proper people.
and
Probably
whether it was the previous government of Nawaz Sharif, where we heard about 7-8 different projects for the youth. God knows what has happened to them.
people were given laptops and a bag with over there and
I mean, that was another scandal, as we all know. But what I'm saying is that if your youth is not channelized, if their energy is not properly looked into, that is going to be a mega disaster.
Definitely.
And nothing has been done so far. We always claim that we are a young nation. Then what the decision makers at the top have done for the young nation?
Definitely.
I mean, that is a very, very big question. Now, another important area, sir, about talking about this CPEC issue. Now, Nyasa, we have also learned that every government, whether it's the government of Pakistan People's Party or PMLN or the current one, they all, are taking a lot of happiness in saying that this is because of us. I interviewed Zardari Saab once and he said this was my brainchild. I went to China so many times and it was there. And then PMLN, in fact, throughout their term, the only thing when it comes to economy, that was about CPEC. That's what we all heard. Now again, sir, CPEC, the point is, sir, how long are we going to hear about this CPEC? And when the trickle-down effect, do you think that is going to be there, sir? Or we'll have to wait for a couple of more centuries?
Well, that is the big challenge because, obviously it's a very ambitious project. And if it's designed and implemented properly and everything works according to the book, it can be a game changer if we can attract industry from China because, the wages are increasing there, the shortage of labor finally starting to emerge. But this is where we failed. We had all those huge projects initially in the first phase, which focused on electricity and then, the road network. And obviously, they did not, create industrialization themselves, even though they may have laid, the infrastructure for that. But what we had from that was, all these power projects where, now we have surplus power. And because of that, we have to keep making payments to all these, IPPs. And that's what's really adding to the circular debt. Now, part of that is also because, the growth rate plummeted. If the growth rate had not plummeted, maybe, we would still have been using most of this excess capacity and circular debt would not have gone down. And then, you have these spanky freeways all over the country, but, not much traffic, and especially not much industrial traffic. And now we keep hearing about, all these industrial zones. But if you look at, the actual foreign direct investment coming from China, overall FDI is falling. Why? Because China is the biggest source and, the foreign direct investment has gone down after the initial project. So I don't know what's going to happen. You don't see that much traffic, even coming from China going towards Gwadar. So it's just become, a mill, and you don't really get a very clear picture of what's going to happen. And something like that is crucial for Pakistan. You can forget about remittances, you can forget about the construction sector. They are not going to deliver the kind of growth that Pakistan needs, 7 to 8% for the next 2 or 3 decades, to absorb
Minimum.
our youth bulge. That's not going to happen unless you have something like CPAC. So this is what we need to see, how this government can, reinvent CPAC so that it starts delivering something in the immediate term for us.
All right. Now, Merchant Saab, now currently most of these ministers, I mean, initially whenever we used to read the papers, I mean, one would come up with certain figures, the other would come up with something different. But this time, Shaukat Tareen Saab, since he said that the budget is going to be presented on the 11th of June, and he says that, this is what we have at the moment. So one important area, and that is about the overall growth rate, since there are a lot of challenges, a lot of hurdles, a lot of hindrances on our way. But sir, the lost market share, unfortunately, it takes a lot more to get it back. So is there any policy in the textile sector in particular or otherwise where we can still get hold of that lost market share and perhaps increase it? And we should also not only depend on certain products that we export, there needs to be a proper product diversification process, keeping in mind the future.
You see, let me just give you an example. The export of IT services in Pakistan is taking pride to have crossed $1 billion mark in IT export sector.
Correct?
Do you know the potential that Pakistan possesses, or do you know that how much India exports as an IT sector? It is more than $300 billion that they export. Look at Pakistan. Pakistan is at 1 billion, going to touch 2 billion in a year to come, and then we are planning to have doubled it in the next 2 to 3 years.
And sir, I remember in the budget 2019-20, the Prime Minister said that we will take it up to $4 billion. Anyway.
You see, the potential is there, but the policies are being made accordingly? I mean, we very recently, this Second Amendment ordinance issued, and they have transferred their exemptions into a tax credit. And there are stringent conditions to be followed by the IT sector. And if they do not follow those conditions, their exemption will go away and they will have to pay tax even on their export. So you see, this is the sector which you know and which you can say it's going to earn you a lot of foreign exchange. Instead of giving them benefits or instead of giving them the way forward, you are putting them on the back track at this point of time. So you see, you need to look into what you're doing right now. Go to the drawing board, check which sectors can earn you. Not textile is not the only sector that can earn you foreign exchange. Tourism, as Prime Minister has time and again
All right.
said that tourism is another sector. IT is definitely is going to be a game changer, along with your local local sectors such as construction, the steel prices, the cement prices. Pakistan has a lot of potential in export of cement. You see, you need to find the diversified market. You need to look into the different horizons where you can
Absolutely.
go and give your export. To give, you see, there are. I mean, you cannot rely on only one sector that it is
I
going
totally
to
agree
give
with you
you
on that,
much
Mansab. But
foreign
Mansab,
exchange.
since we are running out of time, sir, would love to have you again in the show. But that's all we have for this hour. Thank you so much, Merchant Saab. It was a pleasure having you, Niyaz Saab, and thank you so much. That's all we have for this hour. I'll see you again. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz.